the conditions where black folk were in 1960. I looked at the unemployment rate, the dysfunctional schools, dysfunctional family, joblessness, unemployment, income, everything, median family income. Then I waited 30 years until 1990 and did the exact same study to see what had happened. Why? Because in 1990, 30 years later, black folks' number of representatives in elected office has gone up over 9,000%. I say if black folk have gone from 103 elected officials to 9,000, boy, we must be doing well in the country. I did the same exact study, discomfort indicator study, and found out that not only didn't black folks progress, guess what? They went backwards. They went backwards because there's no connection between putting a black person in office and getting benefits. None of them are going to do it. As soon as a black person gets elected to office, the first thing he's going to do is violate the sworn oath he just took. He'd swear it over and say, I'm sworn to get in office to represent those people who elected me to office and serve them. As soon as a black person gets to office, first thing I say is that I'm here to take care of everybody. And so you have no representation. And when I got out of politics, that's why I said I quit. I ran the campaigns for, as I said, for presidents, for governors, for attorney generals, and for congressmen and state legislators and mayors. I wasn't in the campaign, I was the campaign manager for them. I have never run into a black person yet who says, I'm going to represent my own people and take care of them once I get in office. They won't do it. That's not white people against you. It's your own people who won't do the things they're supposed to do for you. When Maurice Farade, the mayor of Miami, and Mayor Steerheimer, the county manager down in Miami, in Dade County, says, Dr. Hanson, would you please come down here and help us in Miami? We had 3 race riots down there since the 1960s. Come down here and help us stop some of these problems. And I said, you got a black city manager down there, Howard Gary now. He's in Jet magazine every week bragging about he's the only black city manager in America. Why don't you ask him to do something? They said, well, would you come down and help us? So what I did, I provided $10 million for him. I took $9 million out of a fund for the Department of Commerce and another $1 million from the Department of Labor, and set up a revolving loan fund in Miami called Miami Citywide and Miami Capital, and send it down there so black people can go in there and get access to money to start businesses in the city of Miami. That money went down like in October. When I got down there, then they called me and said, why wasn't working? I said, why? They said, you had to come down and check. I went down and checked, and Cubans had taken it over by June. And they had put out 27 loans to Cubans, took the program from the blacks. So my white friends, Mayor Maurice Farade, who's a good buddy, and Mayor Steerheimer said, come down here and help us. I went down there and I said, what do you want me to do? I said, why don't the city manager do something? He said, you go talk to him. I went over to Howard Gary, the city manager in Miami, and I met him in front of the city hall. And I said, Howard, why don't you do something to help these black folk? Look at all these houses are slum infested. They're leaning and falling down. People standing on rocks to get in the house. Rats running all over the place. I walked into them. You could see all the way upstairs, a big hole, all the way up to the toilets and the bathrooms up next door. Do something to these people. Give them some jobs. And now why don't you help black folk? He said, Dr. Hanson, let's get one thing straight. He said, I am not a black city manager. He says, I am a good city manager. And why should I go out of my way to offend whites and Hispanics and Cubans to do something for black folk? I said, if you don't know, I'm not going to tell you. But I said, the first chance I get, I'm taking you out of this office. You can count on that. And by 1988, I had him out of there. Because you see, black people don't want to help their own people. And that's why I'm so proud of this Black Chamber of Commerce to say, we're going to go in and start doing something for black folk, not to hurt anybody else. Now, how do you do it? You go back to the basic problem, which is lack of wealth. Now, black folk got almost getting close to about $1 trillion in wealth now. $1 million in wealth. $1 billion in wealth. What you need to do now, what you have to do is to figure out how to tap that money and hold it. Black folk right now, annual disposable income makes up about the 9th richest nation on earth. But the reason black folk are so impoverished and poor in this city and all these other cities, they don't practice group economics. They can't practice group economics. Why? Because they don't have communities. Integration destroyed their communities. Now, when I go across America, I go to every city, and I cannot find not one single black community in America. All you got in America are black neighborhoods. A black neighborhood is totally, absolutely useless. A black neighborhood is where you eat and sleep. The Holiday Inn, the Marriott, is a neighborhood. You don't have any black community, not one black community in America. To have a black community, you must qualify with 3 things you must have. You must have a wholly independent economic structure, You must have a code of conduct. You must have people in elected office to represent you. They have to be qualified as a community. I go across America, I can't find one. I get into California, I can find Chinatown, Japan towns, little Cambodia, little Saigon, Korea towns, little Mexican towns. I can find little Havanas, Hialeah, Cork town, Pork towns, little Italy's, little Italian, Greek towns. But I can't find a black town any place in the country. If you don't have a community, you can't play the game in real life Monopoly. You cannot practice Monopoly in this town unless you all build a community. You got to build a community. And the community, if you can't build a community, you got to build a sense of a community. And I go up to Philadelphia and talk to my Italian friends. All of them don't live in Little Italy anymore. They identify with Little Italy and come down and support it and buy from it in stores and businesses. Now all the other groups, they do that naturally and instinctively. You got to set up this town right now, and I want the Chamber of Commerce to start doing this, to get all their organizations to learn how to start training black kids how to produce wealth. It is wealth that determines your equal opportunities. Your wealth determines where you can go and where you can't go. Civil rights and socialism gets you nothing. It is what you own and control that will determine your competitiveness. I got 5 fingers, 10 minutes, okay. Let me move a little faster then. I know I'm talking too fast for you all now, but okay. But you got to build a community. And it can be build a business community someplace in this town. Go find a decent street someplace where you got a good traffic flow that is not being properly and sufficiently used. Block it off and in your mind and say, we're going to take and develop this area. Why? To take the burden off the rest of society for paying for our food stamps and welfare. We just start generating our own income and wealth. Okay? You pick that block. Then you get a big assembly like this and call every black you know in Grand Rapids here. Every black. You divide them up in the room. You put all the blacks that own businesses on this side of the room, all those want to go in business on this side of the room. You ask all those already in business, say, look, how many of you would be willing to relocate your business where it is now into our business community? And get them to make a commitment to relocate if you build a black community there. Then you go to this side and say, how many of you all want to go into business and provide businesses that we currently don't have? How many of you open up a gas station or cleaners or grocery store or drug store and move into that community? And get a commitment out of them. Then you go to your politician and say, I want you to support this. And we're going to mark this as a black business district where black folk can practice group economics. Your money must bounce. If you're going to be competitive in playing real life Monopoly, your money must bounce 8 to 12 times before it leaves your hands. Now typically Hispanic money bounces 6 to 7 times. White money bounces 8 to 12 times. Asian and Arab money bounces 12 to 13 times. Jewish money bounces 18 times. Black money doesn't bounce once. The danger zone in this world right now in any city is to get on payday, to get between where a black person is working and getting paid and getting to a mall. You'll get run over that's as fast as hell because they're going to go straight to that mall with the money. They don't bounce the money. They don't buy from their own people and circulate the money. Their money must bounce around. And that's the problem in Detroit, Michigan. Detroit, Michigan right now, they had a budget up there of something like about $7-8 billion. They had another $2 billion in school, and black folk were circulating about another $4 or $5 billion. If they'd have circulated 10 to 12 times, they would have had about $300 billion to run that city. But all of them go right across 8 Mile Road and drop their money. And they produce no income and no jobs, no services, no goods, no tax base for their own people. They provide it for the suburbs. The suburbs love that. So now Detroit is poor and impoverished because his money went outside the community. And if you want to be able to save this city and help this city at the same time, learn how to buy from your own people. And mere fact, I got to tell you to buy black means there's a problem. Everybody else knows that. Go right now, I bet you, not on this town, I can go right now and find a Hispanic community. I can find an Arab community. They will buy from their own people. But our people don't have trust. They don't have trust. They don't trust each other. You can't trust each other if you don't have a community. A community comes first. Once you get a community and you get to know people, then you move up to the next level, you trust them. Once you learn how to trust people, then you move up to the 3rd level, you begin to cooperate with them. And once you learn how to cooperate with them, then you get to the 4th level, you start holding them accountable for what they're doing wrong. The same thing in business. In business, if you're building a business operation, and competitiveness and powernomics is a 5-story building. The first thing you all should be doing, as I said, get you some institutions like the Chamber and started teaching, acquiring wealth and power through operating businesses. If you build an economy, that's a 5-story building. The first floor must always be economics. Always build an economy before you do everything else. The first floor is the economy. The second floor is politics. The third floor is the court and police departments, the enforcement system. The fourth floor is the media. The fifth floor is schools. Now again, you've been bamboozled on that because they keep telling you that if you go to send black folks to school, jump to the fifth floor and try to come back down. Education can't do nothing. Education is just a tool. You start with your economy. Once you build an economy, a viable, competitive economy, by making your money circulate 8 to 12 times, you take that money and you move to the second floor. The second floor is your politicians. Don't worry about voting. You don't have to vote. People that got money, whether it's organized crime or wealthy people, they don't have to vote. You take your money on the first floor and you buy every politician on the second floor. And if you can't buy them, you rent or lease them. And once you rent or lease those politicians or buy them on the second floor, you hold them accountable to go to the third floor. And you stop the police from shooting and killing black folk all the time. And come up with new codes of conduct. Then once you get to the third floor and get the police and court system straight, because you can now effectuate it, then you go to the fourth floor. The fourth floor means media. You cannot own television stations, radio stations, and daily newspapers if you don't have an economy. I hear black folk crying all the time. I have 2 radio stations. I used to have 4. You cannot have a media operation unless you have an economy. Who's going to buy your time, your ads? You got to have an economy to buy the time. And so you got to, right now we have 12,000 radio stations in the United States. We got about 12,000 cable systems, 5,000 daily newspapers, 5,000 TV stations. Black folk own 35 thousandths of 1%. You can't even communicate. You can't communicate, you can't organize. You can't get communication because you don't have an economy. And once you get enough money, you put your medium up at the fourth floor. Then lastly, you tell the fifth floor, which is a school system, say, here's what we want. We don't want any more black basketball players and football players. Every black right now, a successful black, has got some kind of an illicit relationship with a ball. He's either running with a tennis ball, basketball, golf ball, football, setting on jokes, telling jokes, pretending he's having a ball. Just get away from that. And say from now on, you try to raise kids that can produce something. The producers will be the people survive. Right now, black folk are 0 producers and 100% consumers. You're going to get totally wiped out in this country and wiped off the face of the earth under globalization if you don't learn how to produce. And once you start producing, do it vertically. You produce something at the bottom level, then you go up and have other blacks come in over you. If like I'm producing fish, 1 million pounds of fish a year, I want blacks to come in and warehouse, wholesale, distributor, then retail. I want to see some black lobster restaurants in the country. And you build, and about 2 more minutes I got. Now, and you build these vertical orders based on your competitive advantages. Build your businesses where you have a competitive advantage. What are your competitive advantages, black folk? Always build your business where you dominate in population or you dominate in spending patterns. I built the seafood factories. Why? Because blacks eat 3 to 4 times more seafood than whites, and you spend $9 for every $1 whites spend. You should be controlling the seafood industry. Do the same thing with leather. You do the same thing with your hair. Right now, blacks are the only people got a certain quality of hair, and yet the Koreans are controlling black hair care in America. And once you build these businesses, like the difference between Detroit and Chinatown, you got it in Chinatown in New York. In Chinatown, New York, they got about a little less than 300,000 Chinese there. And in Detroit, you had almost 1 million blacks. I looked at the two and compared them. In Chinatown, they had 35 banks, 35 Asian banks. In Detroit, they got 2 black banks, and that's owned by the same one. How is it that almost 1 million people don't have 2 banks and 300,000 have 35 banks? I looked at the number of restaurants. The Asians had almost 400-some restaurants in New York. Black folk in Detroit had 3. I looked at and I said, how do these Asians producing so well and have so much? And Asians have the highest median family income in America. Here's what they do in conclusion. They build around their advantage. What is it that Asians eat the most of? They eat noodles. I went and found something like about 100 and some noodle factories in New York where they produce their own noodles. Now, once they produce the noodles, what do you put on the noodles? They put a sauce on the noodles. I found about another 60 or 70 companies that produce the sauce to go on the noodles. Then I said, what else they producing? Then I found that they had, I don't know how many, 35 or 40 companies that made the little fortune cookies. They take care of their own people. That's why you'll never see Asians, Arabs, Hispanic, or American Indians out marching for integration or for social civil rights. They don't do it. They build businesses. I love you all. Take care.